The station was quieter than it should have been for a place that never truly slept. The lights hummed overhead, casting long pale reflections on the polished floor, and the air smelled faintly of metal, coffee, and something old that had soaked into the walls over decades. I stood near the edge of the platform, my coat pulled tight, listening to the distant echo of a train that had already passed through without stopping. Late night had a way of stretching time, turning minutes into something heavier, something that pressed against your chest. I was tired in the way that reached deeper than the body. It was the kind of tired that came from carrying thoughts all day without setting them down. Work had run long, conversations had felt hollow, and home did not feel like a place that was calling me back with warmth. The train was simply a way to move forward, a steel promise that I would not be standing still forever. When the train finally arrived, it did so without drama. The doors opened with a soft sigh, as if the train itself was relieved to let people off. Only a handful of passengers stepped out. Their faces were blank, their movements automatic, like they were already dreaming. I stepped inside, choosing a seat near the window, and watched the platform slide away as the doors closed again. The car was nearly empty. A few scattered figures sat alone, each wrapped in their own small world. Someone near the front leaned their head against the glass, eyes closed. Another person sat hunched over a phone, the blue light reflecting off tired eyes. The rest of the seats were open, quiet, waiting. As the train pulled forward, the city outside blurred into streaks of yellow and white. Buildings passed like silent witnesses. Somewhere beyond them were lives continuing without me, dinners finishing, arguments settling, lights turning off one by one. Inside the train, everything felt suspended, as if we were all floating through a space between where we had been and where we were going. That was when I noticed the stranger. He sat across from me, though I was sure the seat had been empty a moment before. He wore a dark jacket that looked worn but carefully kept, the kind of clothing that told a story without asking for attention. His hair was touched with grey, not in a careless way, but in a way that suggested time had been both kind and demanding. He looked out the window, not at the passing city, but at his own reflection in the glass. For a while, we rode in silence. The rhythm of the train became a steady background pulse, almost like breathing. I tried to return my focus to my own thoughts, but something about the stranger kept pulling my attention back. There was a calm about him that felt rare, especially at that hour. He did not fidget. He did not check a phone. He simply sat, present, as if this moment was exactly where he was meant to be. Eventually, he turned his head slightly and met my eyes. There was no surprise in his expression, no awkwardness. Just a small, polite smile, the kind that acknowledges another human being without demanding anything. Late-night trains have a way of bringing interesting people together, he said. His voice was gentle, steady, and carried a warmth that surprised me. It did not sound rehearsed or forced. It sounded like someone who spoke because they genuinely enjoyed the act of sharing words. I suppose they do, I replied, my own voice sounding quieter than I expected. Most people are somewhere else by now. He nodded. That's true. The ones who remain are usually carrying something heavy. Or something unfinished. I let out a soft breath, unsure whether to laugh or defend myself. And what are you carrying? He looked back out the window, his reflection merging with the dark outside. Stories, he said after a pause. Some of them mine. Some of them borrowed. Some of them waiting to be told. There was a sincerity in his words that made it difficult to dismiss them as poetic nonsense. Something in me relaxed, as if I had been waiting for permission to speak honestly. "I think I'm carrying questions," I said. "The kind that don't seem to have clear answers." He smiled again, this time a little wider. "Those are often the most important ones." The train slowed briefly, stopping at a station where no one got on and no one got off. The doors opened and closed, and we continued on, deeper into the night. "Do you travel this late often?" I asked. "More than I used to," he replied. "There was a time when I avoided it. Darkness can make people uncomfortable. It shows them things they prefer not to see." "And now?" "And now I think darkness can also be honest," he said. "During the day, everything is loud. Everyone is performing. At night, there's less pressure to pretend." His words settled into me like a quiet truth. I thought about how different I felt on this train compared to earlier that day. How my guard had lowered without me noticing. "What about you?" he asked. "Where are you going tonight?" I hesitated. The answer felt simple, but also strangely complicated. "Home," I said finally. Though I'm not sure what that means anymore. He studied me for a moment, not in a way that felt intrusive, but in a way that suggested he was listening beyond my words. "Home can change," he said. "Sometimes it's a place. Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it's just a feeling we're trying to get back to." The train rattled softly as it moved through a darker stretch where the city gave way to long, unlit spaces. My reflection joined his in the window, two figures suspended against the night. "Can I tell you something?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. "I'd be honored," he said. "I feel like I've been moving for a long time," I said slowly. "Working, planning, deciding. But I don't know if I've actually been going anywhere." He nodded, as if he had heard this many times before. Movement without direction can be exhausting. It feels like progress, but it leaves you empty. "How do you know the difference?" I asked. "Between moving forward and just moving?" He thought for a moment. "Forward movement usually brings clarity, even when it's difficult. The other kind just brings noise." The train passed another station, its name flashing by too quickly to read. The stranger shifted slightly in his seat, folding his hands together. "May I tell you a story?" he asked. I smiled. "I think that's exactly what this night needs." "There was a man," he began, his voice lowering just enough to draw me in, "who spent most of his life chasing certainty. He wanted clear answers, solid plans, guarantees. He believed that if he thought hard enough, worked long enough, he could eliminate surprise from his life." I listened closely, the train fading into the background. He chose his career carefully. He chose his relationships carefully. Every step was measured. From the outside, his life looked successful, even enviable. But inside, he was always tense. Always afraid that something unexpected would undo everything he had built. The stranger glanced at me briefly, then continued. "One night, much like this one, he found himself on a late train. He had missed an earlier ride because he stayed late at work, trying to perfect something that did not truly matter. He was angry with himself, frustrated with the delay. I felt a strange sense of recognition, as if the story was unfolding uncomfortably close to my own life. Across from him sat a woman reading a book, the stranger said. She noticed his restlessness and smiled. Not because she wanted anything from him, but because she recognized that tension. She had carried it herself once. The stranger's voice was steady, but there was something personal beneath it, something lived in. She asked him why he looked like he was running even while sitting still. At first, he brushed her off. But something about her calm made it hard to lie. He told her the truth. That he was tired of planning, tired of control, tired of feeling like life was always one mistake away from falling apart. The train swayed gently, like it was encouraging the story along. The woman listened. He continued. Then she told him something simple. She said certainty is not the same as safety. Sometimes it is just a smaller cage. I felt a quiet shiver run through me. That night, the stranger said. The man did something unfamiliar. He stopped trying to solve his life. He simply allowed himself to be present. He got off the train without rushing. He walked home instead of calling for a ride. He noticed the air, the sounds, the way the city breathed at night. The stranger paused, letting the silence speak. Did it change everything? I asked softly. He smiled. Not all at once. But it changed how he listened to himself. Over time, he learned to trust moments instead of plans. He learned that direction often reveals itself when you stop forcing it. The train slowed again, approaching another stop. This time, the doors opened and a cold draft swept through the car. A couple stepped on. Whispering to each other, then moved to the far end. I looked back at the stranger. Are you that man? He chuckled quietly. Parts of him, yes. Just like parts of you are already different from the person you were when you stepped onto this train. I thought about that. About how this conversation, unexpected and unplanned, had already shifted something inside me. Why tell me this? I asked. Because you were listening, he said simply. And because late-night trains are generous. They give us space to hear what the day drowns out. We rode in silence again, but it was no longer empty. It was full of reflection, of thoughts settling into new shapes as my stop approached. A faint nervousness rose in my chest. I did not want the conversation to end. It felt rare, like stumbling upon a quiet room in a noisy building. This is me, I said, standing as the train slowed. Thank you. For the story. He nodded, eyes kind. Thank you for receiving it. The doors opened, and I stepped onto the platform. Before the train moved again, I looked back. The stranger was still seated, already gazing out the window, his reflection blending once more with the night. For a moment, I wondered if he would still be there the next time I rode this late. Or if he had only existed for this stretch of track, this particular night when I needed to hear those words. The train pulled away. Disappearing into the darkness, I stood on the platform, feeling lighter than I had in days. The questions I carried were still there, but they felt less threatening. More like invitations than burdens. As I walked home, the city felt different. Quieter. Kinder. As if it, too, was listening. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.